Time stops for no man. It continues forward with a steady and stable pace that can only be seen in the movement of continents, stars, or human progression. It is rare that man has the self-reflection to notice when history passes into a new age, but a unique exception is found in the early 19th century. In the radical, beating heart of Bavaria, a revolution is taking place, which may well eclipse that which caused this turbulent conception. Steel and discovery is forging something new as coal fuels the forge of innovation and industrial discovery. In Egypt, the Corsican eagle fell to a musket ball of a common soldier, stopping the general's rampage which had already felled the world's greatest empire. And in London, after a humbling defeat, a young inventor designs plans for great ships of iron to humble the world over. For Sardinia, chaos and decline follow ambition. Like Icarus, the old kingdom has flown too close to the sun, and though it may survive, the burns will not heal quickly. To us, this is the Victorian era, but in this world, such a name would make no sense. This is the Orientis Secculum, a time defined by the absolute power and hegemony exerted by the Chagta Empire, one of two great states descended from the conquests of Genghis Khan himself. We will continue to follow the House of Torres, despite civil war and exile, still rule in Cesare. This is a time of radical political change and revolution. Whether they survive in power or at all should not be taken for granted. This is the first part of the first roleplay grand campaign in Victoria 3. Let's begin.
We're going to start working on railways. 2 steel mills, 2 tool workshops, a paper mill in Sicily, 5 shipyards in Sardinia, and then we'll work on coal. Let's get that gold too. Interest, we only got 2 this time because we haven't upgraded our navy yet. We'll do one in Eastern Europe then, and we'll do one in South America. Increase taxes, consumption tax on liquor, decrease government wages. And then we need to start working on really wood. If we get the imports on it, we're fine. Let's establish colonies in the Azores, in Tripoli, in the Western Sahara. We're going to leave Australia alone. That's not our purview. Let's rival the Dutch too, with our authority and influence. We're going to start improving relations with the Bavarians, with the Ukrainians, with the Chagatai, with the Japanese. The war, but with the blowing of the Suez, a lot of the meeting in that victory is gone. That being said, we still have taken the majority of central Italy, besides the papal regions, Lombardy and Ferrara. So as we wait for the young king to come of age, we are really in an unstable period where our economy, much like much of Europe, is trying to aggressively industrialize, but we're having some troubles with that. So the way I'm going to do this for House Torres is the reactionaries are going to be Torres supporters. So if the reactionaries ever get into government, House Torres is going to be put back on the throne, or we're going to fight a civil war. So a note on that as well. So for young Napoleon, he's old enough to understand his situation. For him, it's all about trying to centralize control and rule and trying to get support for his actions. A new astronomer takes the stage. In the past, Paolo Landi has often expressed a great interest in astronomy and observes the starry sky in his free time. Up until the present day, a number of amateur astronomers have rendered outstanding service in advanced astronomy as a science. The countless amount of objects has repeatedly meant that scientific dilettantes have also been able to help learned experts with their records. Amateur astronomy was a big thing back in the day. It still is, actually, but especially back then. One of our admirals is an amateur astronomer. Sure. A strange superstition. Reports have come in of a strange illness harrying the members of the same family in Sicily. Locals have started exhuming the bodies of the dead in an effort to stop the so-called curse. We need to try to get the church back a little bit more behind us. We don't work with them, and we're not going to give them power, but getting them a less hostile right now for centralizing control and power would be a very good idea. We have such a big wood crisis. I really don't want to produce it ourselves. I want to import it from other economies. We're trying to industrialize, not stay back in the old era. Members of our industrial advisors would be very much strongly against that. Lithuania has embargoed us as soon as we tried to import wood from them. One of our old enemies, and given that we've worked with Ukraine in the past, that's not surprising, I suppose. Let's put a consumption tax on the services, and then we're going to do decrees. Yes, they did. The Chagatai are colonizing Australia. They are absolutely terrifying. They're like the Ming on steroids, except that they're not a degenerate or an in decline emperor. This is an high imamate ruled over by a Muslim king. So they're very different, much more stronger than the Ming were historically. Oh yeah, this deficit isn't sustainable. We're way too deeply in debt right now. We completed the one steel mill, which is what I wanted. Yeah, 1.8 million. We took on a lot of debt there. We needed to get out of the woodwork on our bureaucracy. Now we just need to hire more bureaucrats. Until we do that, our economy is basically in standstill. We're working on coal. We'll turn all of our mining up into atmospheric engines. We'll build the munition plant so we're not in the deficit. When we're done with that, I want us to transition slowly to iron frame buildings. So we're going to build up an iron sector, which will be easier if we have the coal production, which we're building up. Have faith. The economic minister for the young Napoleon is more than capable at the moment. We'll get into roleplay once I'm not trying to save the economy too. You can watch me try and desperately save our collapsing economy for now. Breakdown discipline of the Navy. Discipline of the Castoro Sardinian Navy has reached a breaking point. We have mutineers right now. We're going to do a crackdown, which will really screw up our Navy for 5 years. I know it wouldn't make sense in a roleplay, right? Basically, after the Civil Wars, when all the old bureaucrats from the old regime, basically the Torres family, probably fled or died. A lot of them were killed in the rebellions and the civil wars. Those who didn't probably fled with Yemunder to Castala. So we don't have many bureaucrats. We're trying to train a whole new generation to run like basically a giant kingdom / empire. So we got to lower an institution. This is painful, but we got to do it. We're gonna be putting cuts in place for government spending on education across the board to private schools. We got to get that bureaucracy up. It's the only way we can do it right now. Groceries are that cheap? Because our people are so poor they can't buy groceries, they have to buy grain. Woo. Let's sustain the market by exporting them to France for now then. Another rough era for Sardinia. We've been here before, we'll be here again. Sailors have been complaining about the harsh punishments they receive in the Castoro Sardinian Navy. Beatings will continue until morale improves. Yeah, oh there we go, look at that money we're getting now. We actually have ships. A seasonal meteor shower allows our astronomers to see a particularly large number of astronomical objects this year. Ooh, our current government is not accepted. We're going to go and reform the government and reform a new coalition with the aristocratic interests of the government. They also represent more of the old school conservatives that Napoleon had supporters for, the first, not the second. He is going to be crowned in less than a year's time as well. All right, that's freed up a bunch of bureaucracy there for us. Not as much as I expected, though. Let's get rid of some of our generals, too. We'll get rid of Luigi Molinelli. That'll piss off the aristocrats. Fire Luigi Ferra, which will piss off the professional interests. Pier Francesco Fortegueri will fire. That'll piss off the village interests. For our admirals, we'll fire Paolo Landi, and we'll keep Gielio Settimo. We will start to work on upgrading our naval professionalism and rebuilding our navy, but we gotta deal with the economy first. Clearly, our 2 million in debt right now. Napoleon I is 16. He has been crowned, and he is corrupt. He is a corrupt diplomat and a conservative, a moderate. Yo, you gotta be kidding me. Tax waste and pisses off all interest groups, reducing popularity. He's not popular. Young Napoleon is a shadow of his father. My God. The military is happy. Conservatives are happy. Professional interests are angry, and liberals are getting a bit unhappy now too. Oh man. Yeah, he is basically Napoleon III. We gotta try and get the bureaucrats and professional interests back on our side here. Let's fund the government a bit more, that'll help. Let's fully fund it. It'll be expensive, but it will help in the long term. We'll start paying them properly again. Professional interests are still angry. Military is fully supporting us. Munition plants, paper mills, sulfur mine, naval yards. Then we're going to start to properly industrialize next. Blitzomania in Sardinia. A great composer stopped in our country on his current tour and decided to stay for a while. Franz Liszt was an Austrian-Hungarian composer, pianist, conductor, theater director, and music teacher. Liszt was one of the most prominent and influential piano virtuosos, and with an oeuvre of over 1,300 works and arrangements, one of the most productive composers of the 19th century. Although a large part of his oeuvre can be assigned to piano literature, Liszt also gave a clear impetus in orchestra music for the development of the symphonic poem. His concept of a program Music and the use of new harmonic and formal means made him, along with Richard Wagner, the best-known protagonist at a new German school. Liszt began an extensive tour in Europe in 1839, which he continued for the next 8 years. This period was Liszt's most brilliant as a concert pianist, and he received many honors and much adulation for his tours. Beautiful. So Liszt is currently in our capital performing. Music tradition. So currently, this is just an era of real, just decline. I mean, the economic industrial interests in our country are doing quite well in expanding industrialization, but the government is just stagnating under our corrupt monarch. The military is stagnating under the post-Napoleon era, where they're just not getting funding anymore. The Navy is a shadow of its former self. Napoleon is running our country into the ground, to make this very clear, by the way. Just a heads up. This guy is young, inexperienced, unpopular, and corrupt. He is screwing up everything we've done. After some time of staying, a great composer decided to leave. Liszt has departed for a never capital. Through the widespread introduction of the atmospheric engine in the mining industry, production at an all-time let's get progress on water tube boilers. The economic decline has finally been stabilized under the capable Bonaparte di Renzi. He'd be the main probably leader of government at this point, given their powerful political dynasty. Whoa, he's a jingoist too. We are in no shape to be fighting wars. We have railways. Let's work on water tube boilers next. We're really focusing on the economy right now. The industrialists and the aristocracy are trying to modernize and increase their profits. Let's look at our Diplo as well a little bit here. Castoro rivaled us. We'll rival them back. Our era of friendship that lasted for 20 years is done now, with Napoleon's conquest and destroying many of their colonies. Oh boy, Egypt's damaging relations. That's not good. They would destroy us in a war. We really need a big ally. And I really want us to not try and ally some of these big boys. We only have our alliance left over with Brazil from EU4.
Você verá como lhe será infrutífero, não é?
So we'll go ahead and form a defensive pact with the Cubans as well. We've had a very off and on relationship with them, but now it's a military junta and not pirates, so we can work with them much better. We're going to be looking to expand the company in Asia once we stabilize here, by fighting wars with the other powers in the region. That'll be the next thing once we get the economy stabilized and rebuild our military. We're going to be continuing the Shakitai, the Japanese, and the Maharashtra in the region, all of which are hostile to us. We have diplomats in Kyoto right now trying to rebuild relationship with the Japanese, but they don't like us too much. They're also currently, they have Castoro, the old monarch of the Torres dynasty, in their country right now. So it's a bit of a complicated political situation with them. Sure. Trade agreement with the Cubans. See if we can get that with anyone else too. I am going to bolster a couple of parties. We're going to bolster the industrialists, business interests, the military interests. We have been doing diplomacy in Italy with the other Italian countries. Let's send diplomats to Lombardy and Savoy as well. Lombardy, obviously, we've had history with since early CK2, really. We've gone in and out of good relations with them more times than I can count, and they are very hostile to us once again. Queen Agnes Albertinghi. So we're just doing a lot of diplomacy right now. Essentially what Sardinia is doing is, like I said, they're decaying under a corrupt, inefficient monarch. A poor excuse for a Napoleon's heir. While doing so, however, our diplomatic corps is very active in Europe again. We've got a lot of diplomats in Europe and in Asia working to build good relations, primarily for trade right now. We are developing our country under the behest of many of the old burgher families and burgher organizations who are expanding our industrial stuff. A lot of this would be merchant guilds, so private ownership, not industrial so much. We're going to upgrade our navy, retrofit some of the ships and part of the fleet, since we are trying to stabilize with a bit of a stronger Somalia. Now, this is interesting, because in EU4, they'd actually tried to do the same thing. They're trying to reconcile and work with us. They're a very odd country, because they had a heyday a long time ago, but now they're really not too strong. That being said, they're really expanding quickly through Central Africa, and they'd be a good ally to have if we want to go colonial in Africa, which, given Europe has outpaced a lot of Central Africa very quickly, would it be the worst idea? Monarchy, laissez-faire like us, very religious, and we don't care about that, so it's fine. They've embargoed Egypt, which we're also hostile with. We need more allies too. They have no military, they have no navy, they have a very good GDP, they'd make a good trade partner, potentially for cheap resources, would be our main incentive to work with them here. Yeah, we'll take the defensive pact with them and let's start trying to trade. What do they currently produce in large amounts? cotton, which we could definitely use more of. Sugar, which we will need more of. We don't right now. Tropical hardwood in particular is of interest because we're not producing very much wood right now. We're actually running out of coal right now. That's a big issue. It only ever replaces Sardinia. I really don't know what to make out of Napoleon in terms of what he would be doing. He's a moderate, he's a conservative, he's a corrupt diplomat. He'd really just be doing diplomacy of other countries and nothing else. Like, he's the definition of a content, unambitious, incompetent monarch. We're really just treading water right now is what we're doing. Which sucks, but we're an autocratic government. He's the head of state. Our government's popularity is declining. A lot of that's the radicals and the interest groups we're pissing off of our current policies. But again, he's a moderate, he's a conservative, and he's just trying to maintain the status quo really for us right now. The Shagatai are going to give us a trade agreement. That is huge. Unexpected. Our good relationships and our diplomacy is really paying off right now. And the Americans are going to give us a trade deal. Oh, yeah. This is lovely. This is exactly what we want. To start building good relationships and good trade partners before we go back to our old colonial ways here. America is French in this timeline, that's true. We got water tube boiler, another big innovation in our production techniques. Let's start working on, I'd say probably ironclads to get ahead on Navy. I mean, we've always been so far ahead of everyone else in that capacity. We'll do rifling and then we'll go for ironclads to try and upgrade our military a little bit here. Let's build our first railroad. We're going to build it in Sardinia to deal with our issues of all the mini factories we have in Sassari. And then let's build an opera house in Sardinia as well. I mean, we had Liszt visit us for a while, so there'd be, I'm sure, a lot of popularity among the rich and upper class to get seriously into music and opera. So we'll build an opera house and we'll start producing instruments with our, I think it's tool workshops that we can do that with as well. That is the one thing our current monarch has. Napoleon is a very competent diplomat. Not amazing, but very competent, which is why we've started to make some new alliances with unexpected people and why we started to really at least stabilize our relations with countries who have had big problems with us historically. We're still sending a diplomat to Gran Colombia too. Another potentially useful trade partner. Start trying to increase our naval professionalism here as well. The corruption of the Castoro Sardinian Navy is at a critical point. Some believe a complete replacement of the Admiralty is in order. So it would really piss off the military though. They're saying we need to fire all our admirals. Can we swing that with the military? No. We'll reshuffle the officers. We're not going to completely throw everything out. We're not radical. It's a very moderate government right now. Trade agreement with the French? I don't think so. Absolutely not. The Salians. That was the monarchy that we tried to oust in the HRE back in CK2 of Lissandro, or CK3. Same dynasty. You've got old beef with them. We overthrew one of their family members to put our daughter of a matrilineal marriage on the throne, and then she never had fucking kids. Or she only had daughters, I think, wasn't it? Ridiculous. Look at that debt. We're under $1 million in loans, finally. Our rank has gone way up as well. Our GDP is really high too. We're above Egypt and Lithuania. Wow. And Castalla. Nabucco. Giuseppe Verdi has celebrated the greatest success of his career so far with his latest opera. At the same time, it incites nationalist feelings to the Italian people. Nabucco is an Italian language opera in 4 acts composed in 1841 by Giuseppe Verdi to an Italian libretto by Temistocoli Solera. I'm butchering these names. The best known number from the opera is the chorus of the Hebrew slaves, a chorus that is regularly given. He commented that this is the opera with which my artistic career really begins. And though I had many difficulties to fight with, it is certain that Nabucco was born under a lucky star. The story of captivity of the Jews in Babylonia became a breakthrough throughout Italy, not least because Italians felt dominated by foreign powers in the age of nationalism. To that extent, Verdi actually served Italian nationalist feelings in Nabucco is still controversial today. Pensiero. The Chagatai really like us. This is really surprising to me. They weren't super hostile actually to us in EU4, but you would not expect it. I mean, we are the only European power to have colonized in Asia. So whereas in like our timeline, so many European powers just like scrambled over each other to get to Asia and made everyone in the region hate them, including the Ming, right? In this timeline, it was just a bunch of Asian countries vying for control and colonies in the region, and us as the first European there gives them the option to have a very powerful military partner from modern technologies, or at least more modern than them, and it also gives potentially the ability to export to them manufactured goods from Europe. So for those reasons, And given the fact that we aren't strong enough in Asia to really contend them, like it's kind of a situation where they would have the high point militarily, but the low point in things that they need in terms of like trade and science, that actually might make sense, not gonna lie. Making so much money off that cheap grain coming from the Chagatai and the paper. Hold on. We're reselling Chagatai furniture to Egypt. Oh, can we start making money off the Chagatai and double dip here? Let's take a look at that. We can resell Chagatai furniture and make a profit here because they're traditionalist and I think they have mercantilistic policies. Oh boy. That might cause some diplomatic issues, but probably would be worth it, honestly. Our economy is really coming back now. We can start decreasing taxes, I would say, at this point to get all those very angry, very poor people off of our doorsteps in the palace. A wonderful great comet has been filling the heavens for days. The Great Comet of 1843 was a long period comet which became very bright in the March of 43. Diplomatically, what he's done for Sardinia already in the beginning or the mid part of the 19th century has been huge. He's secured an alliance with Somalia, with Cuba, and with the Mewar princedom in India, and he's built up a functioning relationship with the Chagatai. Not all his doing, but he'd certainly be involved with it. So diplomatically, he's proven quite capable. If he was an EU4 leader, he'd probably have like 5 or 6 diplo, you know, something like that. We have rifling. Let's start to work on ironclads. There's a political movement for dedicated police force right now and for state religion, which we're not doing. There's an agitator right now. Carmine Tenor is trying to enact state religion, which we value the old system. So we're going to go ahead and exile him, which will piss off the liberals. In a one of his more direct acts in recent years, Napoleon II met with the leader of a liberal movement in his government and exiled him permanently from Sardinia. Dedicated police force, I don't think we'd be opposed to, actually. Let's go ahead and pass that. It's supported by so many people. Yeah, no one does not support it, basically. After upgrading the telescope at one of our main observatories, our astronomers were able to discover 2 new moons of Saturn. The moons of Saturn are numerous and diverse, ranging from tiny moonlets, only tens of meters across, to enormous Titan, which is larger than the planet Mercury. Saturn has 83 moons, which confirmed orbits that are not embedded in rings, as well as dense rings that contain millions of embedded moonlets and innumerable smaller ring particles. 7 Saturnian moons are large enough to have collapsed into relaxed ellipsoidal shape. Only 2 of those, Titan and possibly Rhea, are currently in hydrostatic equilibrium. Nice. Modern astronomy bonus. We have a building for observatories, don't we? Politicians representing the aristocratic interests are complaining that the newly reformed admiralty doesn't benefit them enough. This is our main force in government. We can't piss them off either, so we're going to delay this even more. Fuck, this is expensive at this point. At a certain point, we have to just start pissing people off. This afternoon, Ferdinando Ruggiera, the leader of the reactionaries, delivered a fiery speech advocating for the enactment of the dedicated police force. The manufacture of steam engines has become a profitable industry in Sardinia thanks to our sound investment in locomotive technology. These engines are already being employed across new Corso Sardinia railway lines.